All right, well, I guess we can get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Checkered Chat. I'm Daniel.
I'm Caleb.
We are a couple of cousins here who just particularly like to watch F1, among some other motorsports. We follow IndyCar a little bit, follow MotoGP a little bit, follow Supercross a little bit. But the majority of our content here will be about F1. Unless, some other super cool things happen that we want to talk about. This would have been episode 2, but we had a couple roadblocks while filming and editing episode 1 that would have covered the first 2 races. So we're just going to go ahead and let this be our launch point for the rest of the season. I think we'll go ahead and start this episode off talking about the qualifying for the race for this past weekend. I guess what we could first talk about is what happened with Yuki. FP1, FP2, well, in particular FP1, he finished in the top 10.
Yeah,
in his first practice session, which set a lot of, I think, high hopes that he would perform, not necessarily at the level of Max, but outperform what Liam was doing in the car, which, arguably I'd still say that he did that, but qualifying just was a mess for him once Q2 started.
Yeah, so I think with the practices, they sort of there was definitely a little bit of hope coming out for Yuki. He was within a tenth of Max with his first practice session, and then the second practice session got cut short because of Doohan's crash. But it was encouraging to see him, pretty close to Max in that first session. I think it did come out later that Max's engine setting was they didn't have his engine sort of tuned up as high as Yuki's was, so that definitely played a factor. But there was definitely some promise that Yuki was showing, and I think he got a little not screwed over, but it was sort of an unfortunate situation in qualifying because I believe the broadcast was saying they opted to not put Yuki on a new set of soft tires in Q2, and so basically he was he was fighting for grip a little bit from the start of the lap, and that just he lost too much time and he couldn't make it up. So ultimately didn't make it out of Q2, which like you said, it's better than what Liam accomplished.
Even though Liam qualified higher than he did this week, Liam's in the easier car to drive, as shown by Isaac qualifying P7. I think after Bahrain's this week, Yuki's gonna get another week in the car. I think his results are gonna start to turn in the right direction because even though he ultimately did qualify P15, that's still 5 positions higher than what Liam ranked qualified in both race qualifyings. I'm pretty sure he did P20 and then P18 in the sprint qualifying.
It was P17
P20,
or P18,
something like that.
Yeah,
which it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. So I'm of the thought that Yuki's P15 was more impressive than Liam getting P14 in that car in that RB, and then also sort of, there was the first lap overtake that Yuki had on Liam. That was we obviously can't see into the minds of the drivers or read their thoughts, but it maybe a little spiteful of Liam because
absolutely
there was no other action the entire race. After that Yuki sat behind Pierre Gasly until they all pitted, and then he sat behind Fernando Alonso the rest of the race. So that lap 1 overtake, one of the only highlights, because the rest of the race was sort of lackluster.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really excited to see Yuki get more time in that car, and I think, you know, I'd still say it's maybe a bit early to expect him to be super close to Max,
Yeah.
but
I don't think we're going to see that at all this year. I mean, I think there'll be a couple times where he might finish ahead of him, but probably not off of raw pace.
yeah, absolutely. But I think, I wouldn't say it's too much of a stretch to maybe expect Yuki to creep into that top 10 and then, maybe even start climbing a little bit. And I'm honestly just really excited to see that because that's obviously one of the main storylines of the year.
Mhm.
And for what it's worth, Helmut Marko has said that Yuki's going to get the rest of the season in that car. We'll see if that holds up or
Yeah.
not. But if it does, I'm really interested to see where he ends up at the end of the season.
Yep. The other super interesting thing that happened in qualifying would be pole position, Max. I definitely think a lot of people didn't expect him to get pole. I think, he's obviously always a contender to get pole, but just, the state of the car right now, the Red Bull, it's just so difficult to drive. It's not as quick as the McLaren car. So I think a lot of people were expecting uh obviously Lando or Oscar to get pole, and it just ended up not happening that way. Let's see, what was the gap between Max and Lando for qualifying?
Let's see.
Looks like
Was
1/100th of a second.
Yeah,
So
100th of a second.
very small margins there, and I think that is a testament to Max's ability. By no means is the Red Bull as quick as the McLaren. McLaren is the fastest car by far.
Absolutely.
But even if Max has the second or the third fastest car, 'cause I wouldn't say it's anything lower than the third fastest car.
Mhm.
He's going to squeeze every inch, every millimeter of the track. Every upshift, downshift will be perfect with Max. It's just he could extract the absolute most out of the car on every track, and it just worked out for him in this case this week. Like his qualifying lap, he did not set a single purple record for his purple sector for his pole position. The McLarens had all of the purple sectors, and yet he ended up having the overall fastest time, which I think is a testament to how well he could put together a lap.
Yeah, like you said, I agree. The McLaren's absolutely the fastest car. Um, I think I still think what people kind of miss is that the Red Bull still absolutely has all of its straight line speed. So that's where it can make up a lot of its deficits, but it's also, a lot of Max putting in effort and being able to control the car really well. Because he's very precise with his car. I think I saw sort of like a lap overlay almost of Lando and Max, and it somehow it seems like where Lando was maybe going a bit wide, Max is able to just keep it really really on the line and
Mhm.
really really tight. And so, you got to remember Max is going for his fifth
Yep.
consecutive drivers championship. So, he's established himself as one of the legends of the sport and still very much in his prime. And
Yep.
you have to sort of treat him with that respect as such. And he's always going to be in consideration for pole position, for a win, whatever it may be.
As you win more, I think you obviously hone your skills. So I think as the season progresses, as the Papaya car starts to get on the podium every week, I think you're going to see both Lando and Oscar start to obviously not get on Max's level within the span of one season, but they're going to start to get closer and closer to him to be able to put those performances out each week to fight for the wins, to fight each other for the wins, and to ultimately fight for the championship themselves as well.
I think there's still a bit of team dynamic they have to work out.
Yep.
It's been kind of chippy these first couple races with Australia, Lando having Oscar being right behind him, and then Oscar having to back off, and then they tell him they can race again, and that leads to some speculation, some confusion about what the dynamic sort of is. And then this weekend, Oscar behind Lando again, but Oscar is saying he thinks he gets told this is Lando's pace, he can't go faster, and Oscar it tries to plead his case to maybe go chase Max. Ultimately, they don't give it, and so he's definitely. I do think Oscar and Lando are very much sort of on that same level. I don't think you can flat out say one is better than the other. Given Lando obviously has more experience, but Oscar's just so brilliant for being so young. So I think it'll be really interesting to see where they sort of, if they continue. I definitely think they favored Lando till now. I'd like to see them be a bit more impartial, be a bit more fair, just to sort of see some really good racing between those two, or at least as much as we can get with it. Suzuka isn't going to be one of the circuits for that, but there are definitely still some circuits on the calendar that can make some good races.
I mean, like that's not going to be an issue with just McLaren this season. Any team that's going to have two drivers of the same caliber is going to have that issue. Ferrari's going to have that same issue. They've already had that issue this season with the swap with Lewis and
you're gonna piss some people off with that statement.
Look,
same caliber, Charles and Lewis.
I mean, they're both very good. I'm not trying to say Charles is 7-time world champion worthy, but right now I think they're pretty even on pace this season itself. And Lewis is also just going to be on the back foot learning a new car. But
they both have they're both unhappy with their engineers right now. So
that as well. So
they don't have
Ferrari's going to always have 1,000 extra problems to worry about each season. But Lando and Oscar are both of those drivers realistically could be champion, probably will be champion this season. It's just going to be difficult to truly let them fight it out, I think, in most scenarios. So they're just going to have to take it race by race, I think, and maybe keep track on tallies of whenever one helps the other or vice versa, keep it fair as much as they can.
Well, like the situation with that is, we've seen a scenario like that sort of play out with Max and Daniel Ricciardo at Red Bull, back in the late 2010s. And that was a bit of a storyline that year of, they're like, I helped you last weekend. Why can't you help me? And like they don't necessarily, not saying that would happen with Lando and Oscar. I think they can be very amicable. But we've seen before, it doesn't always work out. Ideally it's kind of, you're putting a lot of trust, and honestly it should be that way because they're grown ass men and they can, hopefully, sort out their differences, but you never know how it's going to go.
And, ideally I'd hope that this doesn't end up as another Brosades. Oscar and Lando are very close friends, and I think their relationship is strong enough to be able to get past the difficulties that would come to fighting each other in a championship. So I think we'll just have to allow them to not let their egos take over when it comes to the two of them. I don't think they would do that to begin with, but we'll just have to see how it plays out, at least until summer break. Revisit summer break, see what the championship is looking like, and see how close of a championship fight we'll actually be having. On the race itself, 1 star out of 5. My God, was it a snooze fest. The only action the entire race was the little bit of lap 1 overtaking with Yuki, and then
The pit lane
the pit lane incident, which I think a lot of people can. There's different. I think there's different viewpoints to what happened. Obviously, it's the pit lane. It's supposed to be one car after another. But whenever the two cars come out even, I don't think Lando did anything wrong, but I also don't think Max did anything wrong. If they come out even, they're gonna leave even. You're not gonna just completely uh allow Max to overtake you whenever you're practically perfectly side by side in the pit.
Well, there was definitely some more space to be had on Max's end, but it's the pit lane. It's not they're not going into a corner like Lando was arguing. I was at his midline or whatever. He saw me. He has to give the space. It's the pit lane. You don't have to. It's not like you're taking a corner.
You're not obligated to that space. I don't think. I mean, people could say like Lando's dumb for doing that all they want. There has been probably a couple times where Max tried to squeeze into the pit lane right next to Lewis in 2021 for sure, once or twice probably. And there's just a lot of times where I think a lot of actions that Lando does emulates how actions that Max does, and they would give Lando crap for it when Max would do the exact same thing as well. So there's always going to be bias to whatever driver you support.
Yeah, I think what got people so riled up about the pit lane incident was sort of immediately Lando going on and being, he pushed me off when again, he's not exactly entitled to that space.
Right.
And then also, even if it were say like in the middle of a corner, Max, he wasn't like swerving or anything. He'd established his line. So Lando has to kind of act accordingly to that. And I think that's sort of what rubbed the people the wrong way. But I do definitely think it got taken a bit overboard, and it ended up not really affecting.
It's racing.
Anything.
You're never gonna want to blame yourself in the moment. Lando, I believe in post race interviews said like, yeah, no, Max didn't do anything wrong. It was a racing incident. That's what it was. It was just the two of them trying to get position. And that's what you just have to mark it up as.
It was really just more kind of unfortunate timing on McLaren's end because, in that situation, ideally you either try to overcut or undercut Max and they just happen to pit on the same lap.
Yeah.
And so, that obviously that the opportunity was eliminated, and that was really the main chance McLaren had to sort of take the lead of that race.
I want to say they pit Oscar the lap before, which probably if they wanted to fight for the win, it would have probably made more sense to pit Lando first if they knew for a fact Max was staying out so they could go for that undercut. It just didn't work out.
I think McLaren has to be the aggressor in that scenario.
Yes.
Because, you're not going to overtake. It's Suzuka, and, Max is going to race hard. And so you have to take the initiative and pit the guy who you think has the best chance to win the race. And maybe they did that, maybe not. But ultimately it cost them an opportunity at the win.
And while there was definitely that little bit of action, the rest of the top 10 didn't change except for Isaac and Lewis swapping positions during the race. And then, the bottom 10 were a little more wild in their finishing positions there. Biggest mover being Yuki, going from P15 to P12.
Well, that was, you got to remember Sainz got the grid penalty. So he P14, I think. Yeah, P14 to P12.
Yeah, well, yeah. But regardless, he moved up more than one position.
Yeah, everybody else was kind of stagnant.
So driver of the day for the race for us, I believe the people voted Yuki, which he has a strong case for. Obviously, besides it being his home race, he did put up, I think, a very valiant performance with the overtakes. I would probably say Yuki. I'd have to agree. He's really the only person that had action the whole race, and I think also putting the car in P12, which, I mean, granted, like I said earlier, it's not points, but he's already equaled Liam's best finish in the Red Bull with zero retirements helping that. And
Yeah, I think you it was really important for Yuki to just have a really clean weekend. Not
yeah,
not necessarily be the fastest he could be. I think it was just important for him to be clinical and keep the car on the track and get it to the finish line.
Yep.
And P12 after only 3 practice sessions in that Red Bull is not bad at all. Um I'd be more inclined to give driver of the day, you know, to Max because to be honest, it really was just a great race from him.
right.
He literally did not make a mistake that entire time. But for somebody a bit more, maybe under the radar for the weekend, I would say Kimmy.
Mhm.
P6, now the youngest driver to lead a race.
Yep.
Um,
Beating Max, I think by like less than a week,
yeah.
around that time frame.
Yeah, I think Kimmy I think he's shaping up to be a really, really sort of keystone driver in
Yep.
F1. As he gets older, he's gonna become a really big star for the sport. And I think one of my favorite moments from the weekend was Bono telling him he's fastest on the track. He's like and then they just go to him in the pit. He's like, "I'm giving it everything, mate."
Good lad.
And yeah, so that's they have a really cool dynamic with
Yep.
Kimmy and Bono, and you can just tell he's putting a lot of effort into his races and into his craft.
I mean,
And
he had big shoes to fill.
yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
replacing Lewis, it's he's giving it his all, and at least he's not crashing while giving it his all, which I think is also very important.
Yeah, notably only finishing 1.3 seconds behind George Russell. So, very, very competitive from him
Mhm.
already against his teammate.
Well, I guess speaking of rookies and crashes, I guess we could start to address the driver market here. The rumors of Doohan's
Premature.
premature exit to the sport has started to kick up after this week.
Yeah, Alpine having Ryo Hirakawa drive their car in FP1. I believe he came out P12 and he finished ahead of Pierre Gasly, at least in terms of fastest lap, which came out to be, let's see here, 2 tenths quicker
Mhm.
or 1.5 tenths quicker than Gasly. Um, which I mean, I'm not sure how much. I'm sure he hasn't driven the car at all. I don't know how much like sim time he's gotten, but that's a really impressive result for Hirakawa. And Alpine also have Franco Colapinto waiting in the wings. He's a very viable replacement. He is most likely the guy that they will put in,
Mhm.
especially since Hirakawa departed Alpine to go back to Haas and be their full time reserve driver, which is due to that Toyota Gazoo racing connection that Haas now have. Hirakawa's sort of best. I don't know exactly. I'm sure he has aspirations to race in the sport
Right.
in F1. I'm not sure how soon that's going to happen or if it's going to happen because they do Haas have Behrman and Ocon, which probably aren't going anywhere anytime soon. But it's really cool to see somebody get an opportunity like that and maybe open some eyes and capitalize on that a little bit.
And it's not just Hirakawa outperforming Gasly in the car. It's also the fact that Jack crashed in FP2 for probably one of the stupidest things I've heard in the sport since I
Mm.
started watching it.
Yeah,
Pulling it off in the sim, that's, I'm sorry, like even if you did do that, like surely you've got to have enough common sense that it's not the same physics in real life. It's gonna be really close, but that's like me trying to say, oh, I put together a pole position in F1 on my computer. I could beat Max. No, like you can't just assume because it worked in the computer in the sim that it would work in real life. And he demolished the car because of it. Like that's a huge mistake, which I don't even want to call it a rookie mistake. It's just a stupid mistake. Uh,
It was really unnecessary, is what it
Yeah.
was. Like, I mean, of all the drivers to even try to pull that off,
It shouldn't have been him.
doing is
Yeah.
not the one to try that. It sounds like something for that to be done. The car has to be so like aerodynamically perfect to even think about pulling that off. Which Alpine are the
Newey did not make your car. You're
Alpine are the only constructor remaining to not score any points this season. So they clearly do not have the car to pull something off like that. So I'm not sure what
went through
possessed
his
doing
mind.
to sort of try that, but it could be among one of the things that cost him his seat, and that we look back on and say this is why he's gone.
I think we're gonna get some Liam Lawson-esque moments in the garages next race or two. If Franco's there, there's gonna be a camera dude on him the whole time. And the second Jack so much so much snaps the car for just a quick second, they're gonna pan to him. Franco's gonna be looming. And I believe Jack's deadline for performance is Miami. So I don't know if they're going to replace him for Miami or replace him after Miami and Imola. But if he wants to keep his seat, he really needs to lock in for the next race or two. Because I think the way we both see it right now, it's looking more and more like Franco's before summer break.
And I'm not exactly opposed to that, because
No,
Franco was so
brilliant
good.
driver.
Franco was so good last year that
Yeah.
I think it's a bit of a shame that he didn't get a seat to start this year.
Yep.
And I understand why Doohan was promoted. I mean, he's been in
He's in their development program,
their driver development program. So obviously teams want to build that up and be able to say, like, yeah, we grew this guy from the start. But if they wanted to do that, they should have done that with Piastri when they had the chance,
Yep.
not doing. And so it feels like they were maybe trying to sort of right a wrong with Doohan's promotion,
Mhm.
but I don't think he fits the bill for that kind of situation.
And it's a shame. It's gonna hurt, I think, to see another F2 promotion get cut out of the sport early. We saw that with Logan. I think a lot of people wanted Logan to succeed. At least Williams, at least saw enough potential to promote him from F2 to F1. Not all of your F2 drivers are Kimi. Not all of them are going to be
Behrman or
yeah.
Guys of those nature.
Yeah, not all of them are going to be future race winners in F1 while they're in their second season of F2. It's a trend that I'm starting to see that I don't particularly like. I don't want these kids to get ripped out of F2 and thrown into these cars in F1, have their dreams shattered whenever they're not ready. I guess you have to seize the moment, and if you don't seize the moment, you're not supposed to be there. But you got to be able to be put in the right situation. And I think a lot of times, a lot of these young drivers aren't ready for that situation just yet. They need more development.
Well, I think it's a very one-sided situation in that an F1 seat is such a rare thing,
Mm-hmm.
a rare opportunity to come upon, that they, like you said, they have to take it. Like, because if they don't,
It might
then
not come up again.
it might be years. It might never come back again. So even being available to be considered for an F1 seat is really hard. But they can't argue that I need more time to develop or whatever the case may be, because they have to take the seat.
Yep.
That's their opportunity right there, and they might not get another one.
We'll go ahead and wrap the episode up with just kind of talking about the new regulations, because I think with how no overtaking happened this race is due a lot to the sizes of the car. Suzuka, like many other circuits on the calendar, come to mind, Monaco, for example. There's just these circuits. A lot of these circuits are just very not small, but thin, like the narrow. The cars are too big to really try to get these overtakes done. But narrow roads, there's a lot of tight turns in Suzuka. It's just you can't put the car there, and also one DRS zone doesn't help as well, especially with these cars kind of being built to overtake in DRS zones. With next year's regulations, the cars will be smaller. That's kind of their driving point for that. Um, how much length are they shaving off?
So they're shortening the wheelbase by 200 millimeters. Or I'm sorry, that's the no, that's correct. The wheelbase is getting cut down 200 millimeters, which is about 8 inches, and then they're making the cars more narrow also by 100 millimeters, which is about 4 inches. And I don't know if it's enough. I think they can or they should go a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
It's either they go a little bit smaller, or in addition to these regulations making the car smaller, they have to maybe rework the tracks a little bit and make them a bit wider. But it's a step in the right direction, because right now, I mean, if you watch a F1 car turning, it's like you're turning a boat.
Right.
Like there's nowhere to really. It's just such a wide radius that the car takes up, to the point where if you do go for an overtake and it's a really tight turn or corner, you're bound for contact to be made, and that's already that's a really big sort of, you obviously don't want that, because
it's a deterrent. The car being that big is a deterrent to
Correct.
always send it for an overtake, which is a shame, because that's what we want to see.
Yeah, and if you do send it and make contact, you're going to get penalized, and you're going to set yourself back even more, and
potentially retire as well.
Yeah.
Ruin someone else's race as well. So no one ever wants to do that.
And I mean, I understand, like so the street circuits, they don't have much room to change. Like Monaco, you can't change Monaco,
No.
because that is literally that's
their road.
That's the road of Monaco. So, and then you get in, so that makes it to where you get into the territory of, well, when do we drop Monaco? But like, you can't say that, because it's one of the Triple Crown races.
Yeah, no, that's,
and so I mean, you can't say that without being sort of looking at it as like a leper or like an outcast.
Yeah.
Because I mean, essentially that race is it's been for a couple of decades now. It's effectively just a qualifying race.
Yeah, which qualifying's electric on Monaco. I'll tell you that much, at least. It's always fun to watch qualifying. But yeah, I think we'll go ahead in this first episode here. Let us follow us on all of our socials. We'd love to talk to y'all about y'all's opinions on what we said, or what y'all have any questions of that y'all want to ask us. Just let us know. We'll do our best to either answer you there, or possibly in the next episode. We'll have to kind of see how that all plays out. So yeah, thanks for listening to us for a little bit. See y'all after Bahrain.